Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about making over this solid oak game table from the 1980s. We're just going to be giving a refresh with some paint and some stain. So if you want to see how I got this look, just keep watching. So I'm coming to you from my client slash friend's basement where I'm gonna be making over this game table today. This has been in her family for a while and her parents were downsizing, asked her if she wanted it, and so it's been in her basement for a while, but the way that it's finished just doesn't really go with her decor down here, so we are updating it today with a little bit of paint and stain. I'm gonna be using Jolie Paint in Gesso White, which is a awesome white that's not really a warm white, it's not really a cool white, it's like a very neutral color that goes with a lot of things. And with the top, I'm going to be sanding that down and staining it with General Finishes, a water-based stain called Greystone, which is a new color, which is totally amazing. Can't wait to show it to you guys. And then I'm gonna be top coating it with their high performance flat top coat, which is one of my favorites. So let's go ahead and I'll zoom you in and we'll get started. Okay, number one, this is going to be a long video, so buckle in, but there's going to be lots of great info so you can tackle a project like this by yourself. Number two, I know what you're thinking. I don't have a game table. The odds that you guys have in a game table are pretty slim, I think, but all these techniques can be used on a kitchen table or a dining table, so don't check out on me. The only difference is I'm able to work on this top independently from the table. I am going to be stripping down this finish today, so I have my eye protection, my respirator fitted with my particle filters, some ear protection, and I'm going to be using my DeWalt Orbit sander. And for stripping off this finish, I'm using a 60 grit pad. You could use a 60 or a 80. You just want to make sure that it's coarse. And I'm going back and forth with the grain of the wood. And as you can see here, that just means following those lines that run back and forth, side to side, just following the grain. So I am just stripping off all this existing finish so that we can put a new stain with more of a modern tone to it to get rid of this orange and yellow. So I am just going to use this coarse grit sandpaper across this entire piece until I remove all that existing varnish. The best way to use this sander for a beginner is not put any weight on top of it and don't push down with pressure. You just want to stay in the same spot back and forth and just be really patient with it and move pretty slowly so you don't get those little circle divots in your wood. I think this took me about an hour or an hour and a half to strip the whole thing down. And once you get it to a place where you have all the varnish off, you're just going to wipe it down with a tack cloth and kind of assess the situation. If you have any areas that look like they still have varnish, go back over and hit those up. And then the next thing you're going to do is go up in your sanding pad. So you're going to look for a medium grit. So I grabbed, I think a 120 or a 150 would work here. Just put that on and I'm going to do the exact same process, go over the whole table with the grain, and this is just going to smooth it out a little bit and prepare it for the stain. And then once I'm done sanding, I'm just going to grab that tack cloth again and wipe away all that dust and debris and just make sure that we have a really clean surface before I start staining. The stain I'm going to be using today is General Finishes water-based wood stain in Greystone. The benefits of working with a water-based stain are that it's easy cleanup, it's not flammable, the odor is definitely less than oil-based stains, and it's going to dry faster. So lots of benefits to using water-based. This is only my second or third time working with it. You do have to stir it up a lot, so I probably stirred it for a good 5 minutes because it's really chunky in the can. So you just want to make sure that everything is smooth. So I'm putting my stain in a separate container to work out of so I don't contaminate my big can. I recommend doing this and really cleaning off that lid before you seal up your stain. I am going to be using a foam brush to apply this. These are really affordable and General Finishes uses them a lot in their videos, and it's my favorite thing to use. You can also use a brush or a pad applicator. There's a bunch of different ways you can apply it, but this is what I'm using today. And you want to paint this on pretty thick. You don't really want to be able to see the wood grain. You don't want to spread it out thin. It is a lot thicker than a oil-based stain, so be aware of that. So I'm just working in small sections here, and once I get all the stain on to my liking, I go back with a lint-free absorbent cloth. You don't want to use t-shirts because that's just going to push it around. You definitely want to use like a shop towel or something that's meant for staining that's going to be absorbent. I'll link the one that I am using below along with all these other products, so check out that description box down underneath the video. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. That's looking really orange down there, and that's what I was thinking too. But it was because the stain was making the wood wet. So as you can see, as this video is progressing here, that orange is drying and going away, and it is becoming a beautiful walnut with like a smoky gray accent to it. And this color, Greystone, is just beautiful. It is a newer color in the General Finishes line. They did not have this around back in the day when I was doing my banister makeover, which if you haven't seen that, I'll link that up above. But this color is just everything. It's the color that you see all over home goods. You see it in restoration hardware, and it's all in one step. I used to have to do 2 or 3 different coats of different colors to get this exact perfect color, and it's amazing that I can get this in one can in one coat now. So as you can see, my technique is not changing from that one section I showed you. You just do little small sections, paint it on really thick, go with the grain, and then you're taking that clean cloth and wiping back any excess or any residue. And I had to change out rags a couple of times because as they get gooped up with that stain, you want to get a clean one. And then after I was done staining the whole thing, I'm just taking one more pass with a clean rag just to make sure I don't have any of that excess stain on there. I know this might sound weird, but I like an uneven and patchy finish. I think it just makes it look more rustic. If you want a really even finish, you just need to pre-condition this wood with a General Finishes preconditioner. So this needs to dry for 2 hours before you can top coat it. So we're going to jump over to the base of the table. We're just taping off the felt to protect it as we paint. I'm also cleaning it off with a mild soap and wiping it down, something that's very important before you start painting. I'm going to be using Jolie paint today in Gesso White. This is my first time working with this color, and I am super impressed with it because it's like a chameleon. It has warm and cool undertones, so it's very neutral, and it can kind of go either way, whether your house is full of like cool toned grays or maybe warm beiges. It really goes with either one. So I'm actually going to be using the Jolie signature brush today in small. I love this brush. It's so comfortable in your hand. If this is your first time here, Jolie is a furniture paint. I typically use these furniture paints, chalk-like paints, chalk paint, whatever you want to call them, matte paint. They all have different names, but essentially they do the same thing. There is there's minimum prep involved. You don't have to sand the piece. You don't have to strip the existing finish back. You just have to clean it off a little bit like I did before, and then you can go in and start doing the fun stuff right away, which is painting. So for my first coat, I am just painting right out of the can because I don't need to thin my paint out at all. I like to put my first coat on pretty thick, and as you can see, I'm going in every which direction. This is going to give your piece a hand painted look. It's not going to be super smooth, but it's not going to be super textured either. And I will thin out my additional coats, which we'll talk about at a later point. But the point of this paint, I think, is to look hand painted. That's the look that I love when I'm working with it. And especially with oak, it's really difficult to get a smooth finish on oak because of that raised grain. You're gonna see that grain no matter what you do. So I like to get some brush strokes in there to kind of hide that grain. Two big things I want to point out to you guys when you're using this paint. As you're going, really make sure you're watching out for those drip marks and cleaning them up as you go. And second, don't go back and rework a section that you've already covered like 5 minutes ago, because if you try to put new paint on top before that first coat is completely dry, it is going to pull that other paint up, and then you're just going to have to go back and do additional coats. So try your best to not go after and fix portions that have already been dry for like 5 or 10 minutes. This paint dries extremely fast. You'll be able to recoat it in about 20 minutes. It'll look flat and feel kind of like chalky when it's dry, so just test it out before you do that second coat. In between coats, I always seal up my paint and I put my paintbrush in a Ziploc bag, or you can use one of these. This is a brush baggie. It does the same thing, and it's going to keep my paintbrush from drying out in between coats. To top coat this tabletop, I'm going to be using my General Finishes High Performance Flat, which is a water-based top coat, so it really cleans up easily and it has a nice flat finish because I don't like shiny finishes. I have used this a lot before and I really love it. You do have to give it quite a big stir because there will be big chunks in there, so I think I had to stir mine for about 5 minutes. I'm putting it in a separate container again to just keep the lint and stuff out of it, and I'm applying it with that foam brush just like I did with the stain. I'm going back and forth with the grain just the same way that I applied the stain. This top coat is really forgiving, so when you put it on, it's milky white and you will see streaks and stuff, but it levels out as it dries, so don't get concerned with overworking it. I really just put it on in little sections like this and then move on to the next section. You do need to overlap it just a little bit so you don't have lap marks. Don't go back and rework a section that you have already done, because you are just going to pull the top coat off. You're just going to keep moving across the table in a slow, steady motion, one section at a time. Stain does need to be completely dry before you apply this, so make sure you wait 2+ hours once your stain has been on there to top coat it. If you want any more information about this top coat and how to use it, I definitely recommend going to General Finishes website. They have a lot of great info on there about temperatures you need to work in and just other tips and tricks. And they also have a YouTube channel as well, which is where I learned how to use all their products if you're looking for some more details. So here I've just slowed it down a bit now that I'm a little bit closer to the camera, just to show you how I'm putting this on. And don't forget to do the edges of the table and underneath the lip a little bit. The dry time on this as well is about 2 hours. So now we're going to jump back and do the second coat on the apron of the table. So for my second coat, I like to put it in a container and thin it out with some water. So I just spritz it with my water bottle, about 10 to 15 sprays. And I also keep that spray bottle handy to spray my paintbrush and just keep my paint a little thinner than that first coat. It'll just smooth it out just a little bit, but still keep that hand brushed look to it. Technique is the same here. I'm just trying to coat that paint on, painting in every direction and just covering up the wood as much as I can. Like I said, with white, I tend to do 3 coats because I just find that that's the best amount of coverage for a light color like this. But as I'm painting along, I just spray my brush a little bit and spray my paint just to keep it a little bit thinner. Okay, fast forward 2 hours. Now we're ready to put another top coat on this tabletop. So I've grabbed my sanding mask and a 320 sanding pad, which is a very fine sanding pad. And I am using light pressure just to kick up a little bit of dust and add a little bit of teeth, as they say, for the second top coat to stick to. In the past, I have used steel wool to do this, and now I know better. I have since learned that you are not supposed to use steel wool with water-based finishes because it can rust, the little particles can rust. So make sure you're using a fine sanding pad like this, or like a really worn in sanding pad if you have something lower like a 220. But as you can see, as I'm sanding very lightly, it is just creating like a very fine dust, and that's all you want to see. You don't want to take it too far because you don't want to scratch your surface and you don't want to take any of your stain up. Here's the fine dust that it kicks up. After you're done doing that, grab your tack cloth and get all of that dust off of there before you start adding your top coat. Coat again that I had sealed up, just giving it a nice stir, grabbing my brush out of my baggie that I used earlier so that I don't have to use a new one. And I'm just applying this top coat the exact same way that we applied it the first time. Go with the grain in small sections. And General Finishes recommends doing 3 coats of this. So we are going to finish this one up, let it dry, and then we're going to hop back over to the apron. Okay, the third coat is just like the second coat. Thin it out a little bit and just paint it on in every direction. Okay, I had to take this tabletop home to do the third coat because I couldn't finish it all in one day before I had to pick up my kids. But this is exactly like the second coat. We're just taking that 320 sanding pad, lightly sanding with the grain, cleaning all the dust off, and then adding that third coat of my high performance finish in flat. So this is my final coat, and just to remind you, dry time on this is 2+ hours, just make sure that your top coat is completely dry before you add these additional coats. Okay, now that we're finished with the top, I'm gonna hop back over to the base of the table and finish that off with Jolie finishing wax in clear, using one of their wax brushes and a lint-free cloth to apply this. Wax is going to seal your paint so that it won't chip or get scratched up. And all you do is get some wax on your brush and just push this into the paint, rubbing it back and forth. I like to tell you guys to think of it as hand cream. You're gonna constantly rub that in, and that porous paint is going to absorb that wax really well. And a tip that I do is once I get the wax onto my liking, I kind of feel it with my hand, and that way you can feel if there's any spots that are lacking wax or that have a little bit too much wax. So once I'm in a good spot there, I'll go back in with my lint-free cloth and just use some light pressure to wipe it and get any of that excess wax off. Again, I'll take my hand and kind of feel, and if there's any spots where my hand drags, then I know I have too much wax there, and I just kind of rub it and buff it in just a little bit. White is the most forgiving color in my opinion when you're working with wax, but it is kind of hard to see where you're putting it on sometimes, so that's why I use my hand a lot to figure out where I have the wax, where I have too much, or where I'm lacking some. But you don't need a lot of wax. A little bit goes a long way. I can finish multiple pieces with my can of wax, and I've had this one actually for quite a while. It's going to seal and protect your piece, and it completely cures in 30 days. On a side note, I actually refinished the inside of this game table, but I'm going to save that for a separate video because this one was already getting really long. But I'm going to show you in my next video how I actually use the stain right on top of this existing finish. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. It'll be coming up soon. But for today, we are finished. So I just wanted to remind you what we started out with. Here is our little Oak Beauty table before, and here she is after. What a transformation. I am so happy with the way this top turned out, from this orangey yellow oak to this really pretty gray washed walnut color, and I only took one step to do it thanks to General Finishes new gray stone color. My client is super happy about this. Her mom cannot believe the transformation, and that's the most fun part for me. What do you guys think? Do you love it? Let me know in the comment box. Do you think you could tackle this yourself? I know it's a lot of steps, you guys, but I think anybody can achieve this finish. I hope you try it out. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed this. Next up with this piece, we are gonna be making over some stools. So again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that video. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you guys next time.